With over 30 years of experience, Barbara has led global campaigns for major brands at agencies like Leo Burnett and DDB, and has worked with top wine clients including Chateau Montelena, Constellation, and Somme Select. She's an award-winning creative leader, having earned Cannes Lions, Effies, and ADDY Awards, and is a longtime thought leader in the wine industry through her work with the DTC Wine Symposium. Today, our three key takeaways are first, kind of cracking the code on U.S. wine marketing. So what every producer, whether they're domestic or international, needs to understand about the U.S. market's unique consumer behaviors in this moment. Second, building the case for marketing investment. You hear it all the time. When a company is not doing well, the first thing that gets slashed is a marketing budget. So you're here to really advocate for the proven strategies in the area of kind of tightening spend to keep those marketing budgets alive. And then third, just given all of your expertise and wisdom, your must-do tips for wineries right now. So some actionable real-world insight.
Sure, it's a heady list. We'll get through it, I know.
Yeah.
We'll get through it, Barbara.
Welcome to Masterclass U.S. Wine Market with me, Barbara Fitzgerald. In this show, we'll break down the complexities of selling wine in the U.S. by discussing the relevant issues of today with experts from around the globe. Each episode serves up three key insights to help elevate your winery's presence in the U.S. market. So grab a pen and paper and let's pave the way for your success in the U.S.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Masterclass U.S. Wine Market. Today, I am thrilled to actually be sitting next to Barbara Gorder, who is the president of Undisclosed Location, a Sonoma County-based branding and strategy consultancy specializing in wine and consumer packaged goods. With over 30 years of experience, Barbara has led global campaigns for major brands at agencies like Leo Burnett and DDB, and has worked with top wine clients including Chateau Montelena, Constellation, and Somme Select. She's an award-winning creative leader, having earned Cannes Lions, Effies, and ADDY Awards, and is a longtime thought leader in the wine industry through her work with the DTC Wine Symposium. So thank you, Barbara, for coming today and chatting with us.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. Before we dive into today's discussion, tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to work in the wine business.
I'm from California originally, daughter of a naval aviator, so went between La Jolla and Alameda, California. I went out to Northwestern for school and stayed there for a long time, but it was time to come home about 15 years ago. And I came back and I started going to the DTC Wine Symposium and volunteering for them because I thought it was a great way to volunteer, to meet people, to integrate into the community. The symposium was very small then. It was held in Santa Rosa. It was mostly a bunch of white guys, a handful of women. And when I say a handful, I'm not kidding. And a very different audience than we have today. But it's been a great place for me to meet wonderful, talented people in the wine business.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a long-time attendee, so I can attest to all of the incredible work that you've done to grow it into something. It's really, I think, one of the most important trade shows of the year for any wine, not just local California wineries.
We have people now from over 15 states and usually several foreign countries. So we've had Italians, French, Australians, people from South America. And it's been fantastic to watch it grow and to see a really wide variety of different people attend the conference. So that's been to the strength. We're definitely a content first show. So what we try and do is come up with what's hot, what's trending, what's important that we need to talk about. And I think just as important as the content are the discussions that take place actually offline. In the fire pits, in, all of the dinners, the different places. And now we're in Monterey, so we can do some golfing as well.
I did love the move to Monterey. It really makes it feel a little bit more immersive, maybe, because you're like, you just feel a little bit like you're in another world.
Well, yeah, and you have to you can have conversations everywhere. You can go on a bike ride, you can go to the beach, you can do a lot of different things. So a lot of people brought partners and spouses and some kids. So it's right by Martin Luther King Day. So a lot of people came and enjoyed the weekend with their families.
It is a little nicer to take your loved ones to Monterey versus Concord. No offense to
Concord was good to us for many years, and it was a swinging deal. But we think that Monterey, and I think it's we want to be about everybody. We want to have our Mid-Coast people, our Santa Barbara people, our Temecula people, and it makes it a little bit easier. We, have always had a great audience from Napa and Sonoma, but we've been growing our SLO and Paso Robles audience as well.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons though why I'm really excited that you're here today is because you have all this fantastic background in the kind of corporate side of marketing and advertising. And I think those insights become so relevant for wineries, which are often built on the backs of mom and pop operations, small family businesses. So I'm really excited to dive into with you today. Our 3 key takeaways are first, kind of cracking the code on U.S. wine marketing. So what every producer, whether they're domestic or international, needs to understand about the U.S. market's unique consumer behaviors in this moment, what the competitive landscape looks like, and obviously the regulatory landscape that we're in at the moment. Second, building the case for marketing investment. You hear it all the time. When a company is not doing well, the first thing that gets slashed is a marketing budget. So you're here to really advocate for the proven strategies in the area of kind of tightening spend to keep those marketing budgets alive. And then third, just given all of your expertise and wisdom, your must-do tips for wineries right now. So some actionable real-world insight.
Yeah, sure. It's a heady list, but we'll try. We'll get through it. I know.
Yes.
We'll get through it, Barbara.
Barbara. So this time I never forget you.
You can't screw that up. Yeah, I know.
So let's talk a little bit about marketing wine in the U.S. And because we are the Italian Wine Podcast, we're also thinking about kind of bringing a brand into a different cultural mindset. So from your perspective, what do you think is kind of some of the big misconceptions that people might have right now about marketing to U.S. consumers?
Well, first of all, every trip I've taken to Italy, I mean, all the producers there, fantastic people, the wine, the food, it all goes together, it grows together. And so I've had a number of amazing experiences there in Montalcino and Barolo, one of my favorites, up in the Piedmont, and then great wines.
You just named, that's a fantastic travel
just a few of my favorites. But one of the things, and you're going to hear more about this at the conference this year, I think that wine in general, and this is for both US and global markets, people depend way too much on demographics. And I think that people need to be thinking much more broadly. And I think a lot of it comes out of a very simple thing. Everybody's got, if you're going to be shipping wine, you've got somebody's birthday, and you've got their zip code. Okay. So you hear a lot of people, Silicon Valley Bank Report and many others, and people just are defined by, you hear it over and over again, how, people are panicking about Gen Z not drinking. And I think that people need to spend a lot more time thinking about what the psychographics are for their target. Because believe me, there are boomers and there are Gen Z people who like tacos, like to listen to music, they like to bring their dogs, they like a casual atmosphere, and they might like Rhones, or they might like sparkling, or whatever it is. I think that people have to think about that very carefully as opposed to what I see going on now. So I think that's a misconception to place people by their life stage. They have kids, or they have grandkids, or they're working, or they're not working. Think about, because people have money nonetheless. And then average order value's been up since COVID in general, even though traffic's been down. So people are spending money, but who are you really talking to? What are they like? What do they like? Country music? What kind of car are they driving? What kinds of vacations are they taking? And think about when people come to your winery, how are they dressing? Are they fashionably dressed? Or are they in jeans and t-shirts? What are they doing? I mean, you need to be real observers of your customer.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, a huge misconception in general, right? And I think that shifting, that's about how do you get that mindset around it, and especially your frontline workers, and getting them to talk to people from a hospitality standpoint, because there's people that come and they're what's commonly known as the dirt and acid people. They're about 5% of every age demographic, and they're going to want to get into the mix, but the rest of people, they want to have a nice time. So there was a LinkedIn post recently, Ed Wojcik, who's on our committee, who's from Tank Wine Garage. We had a town hall that was about kids and no kids, and dogs and no dogs. And it was kind of like a scene out of Parks and Rec, where people were like, no kids. And then people were going, I want to go with my kid. And it was fascinating. And sometimes we do that with a hot topic to see where people and the learning is from different parts, because some people, their brand might be super family friendly and have like a place for little ones to play and do that and serve agua frescas and do all that stuff. And sometimes if you're in a super high-end situation, you don't want to be around anybody else's kids. You want to like enjoy the wine, you want to look at the view, and you like some peace and quiet maybe. So there's validity in either answer. But going back to psychographics, understanding who that customer is, it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And for us as an industry, we've kind of always built ourselves right on the need to tell our story, to share what we're about, what makes us unique. And I'm really curious to get your perspective on storytelling specifically, because it feels a little bit like maybe we've swung the pendulum too far. And there's a lot of conversation about who the winery is, what their brand is, what they stand for. And they almost forget how to let the consumer tell their story and understand how you might fit into it. So what is your thought on storytelling? What is the role of storytelling in the wine industry, and how does it need to fit in the person consuming the wine?
Storytelling is the most overused word in marketing ever. But that doesn't mean that we can do without it, because we are humans. We are storytellers by nature. If you need me to explain this to you, you should not be in marketing. I mean, nobody's a better storyteller than the Italians. They're poetic. They're beautiful. I mean, everybody's talking about it. I mean, you go into an Italian winery and you're going to hear about hundreds of years of history. I was at one of the Antinori properties and I got snagged as like the person who was like, somebody always hands me the wine list. Yeah. And I said, it's what's on that hill over there. So anyway, that's kind of one way to do it. But to go back to storytelling, we have to tell stories, but let the consumer tell you their story. Maybe they're on an anniversary. Maybe they're on a date. Maybe it's just Tuesday. I don't know. But I think, again, human observation is your most important thing, right? I mean, there's often a family story. Typically, there's a family story. And I call this my guide dog truck theory. So when I like it. And I've talked about it at the conference, but when I moved here, it was crazy. I was like, you went to every person's website and there was a guy. Sometimes he was with his wife or with his family, but there was always a guy. He was usually wearing plaid. There was a truck, whether it was an F-150 or it was a cool antique. And then there was a dog. It was usually a golden retriever, Labrador, German Shepherd. And that was consistent across, I'm not kidding, 80 to 85% of what the websites were. Now I think people are doing better and their segmentations are doing better, and everybody can't have that same story, right? There are fascinating family stories, and there are a lot of people. How did the Couturies start farming organically, or what happened at Chateau Montelena and the great Paris tasting? So those are amazing stories, right? But listening to your customer is also very important, because if you listen to your customer, and I think this is true in any business, the more you listen to your customer, the more successful you're going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I would argue, curious to know your insight, that the story is almost more important as an internal tool, so that everyone is aligned on the same page on what the values are, what the mission is. But then you now have to go bring this into somebody else's life in a way that you're not necessarily at the center of it anymore, because the customer is at the center of it.
100%. And I think also when people come to Napa Valley and they're there and it's a special time and they're with their wife or their significant other, whatever, and how they are doing that in a way they'll always remember, right? What wine were they drinking at their wedding, right? And I always said that a great idea was, I think people should advertise more in bridal magazines. For real. I mean, stop going to Wine Spectator and go into bridal magazines, because the most important selection that you have to do is what are the wines I'm going to serve at my wedding? Because you know what? Those are customers for life. Those are people who are repeat customers, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, that's just a slice of it, but be where people aren't, be in a less crowded environment. We know you're going to be in a wine magazine. You might go into food and wine, or you might be online and doing things, but try and find places where it's unique for you. Yeah. I think one of the most brilliant things I saw recently was Monica Lopez and her family threw this lowrider car gathering at Bacchus Landing that was so cool. And they had over 500 people, everything from young people to families to older people. Everybody was enjoying mariachi music. They had super artistic lowrider cars. The food trucks ran out. I mean, it was nuts.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was cool to see. So you don't see a lowrider car festival all the time, for example. Be unique.
Yeah, absolutely. I think these key partnerships are really evolving in these last couple of years in ways that seem like now that they're happening, like, you know, the NBA partnerships and the WNBA partnerships, or an Italian and Ferrari, the sparkling wine that is partnered with F1. Now that they're there, it seems like, duh, why wasn't anybody here before? But
Veuve Clicquot's done a pretty good job in that direction. They always have.
Yeah, they do have great activation. So what would you say, so, you know, an Italian winery looking to sell their wine in the US, how are they getting their psychographic data?
Well, they're going to have to look at things other than traditional data. I mean, again, it's looking at things. It's deciding to be somewhere where other people are not. And, you know, the other thing is that there's a lot of brilliant collaborations going on right now. I think I was talking to Susan Kostrava this morning about it. And one of the things that we keep seeing, like Blood of the Gods up in Walla Walla, which is like, you know, it's kind of an online zine for like hipsters and young people and doing something cool and fresh up there. Sorbet is doing something next weekend at the Fort Mason in San Francisco, and it's all organic, regenerative, and biodynamic. So people who are into that's how they choose their wines. There's over 30 producers there. So how are people coming together? Wine Atlas was another project. So people are coming together as collaborations. And I mean, I can tell you, you know, Italy, I mean, in New York, right? I mean, that was their whole idea. But I mean, if you did more of that, where it's like, I think people understand that the Italians have been making great wine for 2,000 years. Now, help me understand, how are you special? What are you, Tuscan producers? Are you somebody who's doing, you know, what are you doing to band together? And sometimes I would say that would be something to consider.
Yeah, that kind of strength in numbers, and definitely the ethos that we have here in our California wine industry, a rising tide lifts all ships. Thank you, Robert Mondavi. But
yes, exactly. So, I mean, that's what I would say would be something that would be great for them, you know, because I think people would come out and do that, and partnering with food, because Italian wine is always fantastic with food.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any marketing channels, tactics that you feel are really underutilized in the wine space right now?
Yeah, I think we're in a very interesting time between AI and other things, but I think OTT and CTV are essential to consider for people. And being on, you saw it during COVID when people were on multiple screens in their house, whether it was their family room or their phone. You can be on Hulu for less than $500. You can be, so I mean, figuring out, and because your ROI is good, you're going to have to do it probably for a minimum of 90 days, but you can go out to specific zip codes. You could say, take the top 10 wealthiest zip codes in California, which why wouldn't you? Because California consumes 30% of all wine in the United States. So I treat California as a test market, go out OTT, CTV, and go and spend some money in those markets. Or knowing if you have customers, Italian wines are sold in specific areas where people are familiar with Italian wines, go and seek out those areas, because you can get pretty granular about the media. And that is completely underutilized. I think Meta is something that obviously is essential, but it's expensive for what it is. Yeah. And I think it's more of a reminder than a sales tool.
Yeah. So you're using Meta to kind of get that, you know, mind share, but is it converting?
Is it converting to sales? Yeah. I think that's not something that you can prove. Whereas if you do QR codes and all you have to do is watch YouTube for 5 minutes or other types of programming, you can do all kinds of things. Yeah. You know, and then it's basically attributable, where you can send them to a website for DTC sales, or they could partner with food, or they could partner with the government, whatever that looks like, in order to drive sales for those particular markets.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's totally underutilized and is a swinging deal at the moment, because we're just seeing the drop off of cable and linear has been so dramatic. And so now now we're seeing that.
So just to provide some clarity for maybe our international audience who might not know what this is you're saying that with streaming TV, the way ads are run is very different than traditional cable television. And you can buy essentially a geo-targeted ad on a streaming service that is, a fraction. It doesn't even do it justice. I mean, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars was it?
It could be on, and if you think that your audience is into music, you can sponsor music programming. If you think your audience is into HGTV, you can be there. You can choose what you think. If you understand the customer, then you can be there.
Yeah. And because, like you said, streaming is also so not demographic, but psychographic specific now.
Right.
You're
and so
finding
how are you gonna start associating with it? And you can also easily run test markets and prove out your value. You can A/B test things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that is great advice. So let's talk a little bit about championing marketing budgets, because as we mentioned, in tense economic times, these are often the first things to get slashed. So when leadership sees, the marketing as a cost rather than an investment, what's the first thing that you do to start to shift the mindset to support the value of marketing?
Well, I have to understand that it is an investment. The classic marketing story about investment is that Procter & Gamble was a sort of a small company from Cincinnati before the Depression. And they consistently advertised to women early on. And they kept doing it throughout the Depression. And then post-Depression and post-World War II, they became the ginormous corporation that they are today. And so that consistency of investment over years of, let's call them lean years, and they were hard years for American people, paid off big time, but that's what they had to do. The other thing that I think I've found that's very unusual in the wine business, we're doing something at the conference about this. Last year we did a whole segment on marketing budgets. And when I asked people in the room what their customer acquisition was, if they knew what that was, in 70 people, one person raised their hand.
Wow.
So what's also occurred to me over time is that normally COGS, or what it costs to produce that bottle of wine, if you're making anything from a glass to a makeup product to fill in the blank, marketing is part of your COGS. In the wine business, it's not typically. Now, that's not 100%, but that's close to, it's over 90. And so from a marketing perspective, your marketing has to be, if you cannot afford marketing to include your marketing budget, in your COGS, in other words, how am I going to sell this bottle or these bottles of wine? We have an issue, because marketing costs money. Cost of customer acquisition is real. And that's whether you're doing a winemaker dinner or you're doing advertising on Meta or you're hiring a PR consultant, whatever modality that you're pursuing in terms of your strategy, you are going to have to spend money on marketing. And people in the wine business, generally speaking, spend around between 5 and 8%, when, especially with a new product, you should be at least 15. More, if you're launching something, it should be closer to 20, which most people don't do.
Yeah.
And they always think I'm insane when I say that, but that's true, because you have to find ways to do that. And there are ways to do it. I mean, I have had people who have had multi-million-dollar tasting rooms have told me that they do not have $50,000 for a digital marketing budget. I've had that experience.
Yeah.
But people who come from, when they're building a product that takes 3 to 6 years to start,
right,
then they'll take the long view and they'd rather have the building than the marketing.
Yep.
And this also comes from what I referenced earlier, which is marketing. There needs to be trust and communication on both ends.
Yeah. So a question, and I'm sorry I didn't write this down, so it just came to me, but let's imagine an Italian winery is at the moment trying to build distribution out here, so they don't necessarily have widespread distribution yet. What would you say their marketing investment should be in this market, given that they're still should they be investing right now, or should they wait until the distribution's in play? Like, kind of what would you say is the ratio in those times?
Distribution's complicated right now.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing, and it can take time. I mean, I would get your distribution ducks in order, and then I would start investing in the market.
Yeah.
Unless it's a generic Italian wine play. I mean, that I wouldn't spend any money trying to drive brand awareness or promotion if you can't obtain the wines. I mean,
yeah. Still, step one, always get the distribution and then shift to the investment. As you said, for a new brand, something around 15 to 20% would be ideal. Well, you told us a little bit of a great story about Procter & Gamble, but can you share a time that you successfully kind of defended a marketing budget and what worked particularly well?
My favorite story is I was lucky enough to win GM Launch of the Year twice in a row. I don't think anybody else did that. But the first one was on a minivan. And General Motors had never, and this is going to be a shocker to you, I think it's about 1998 or 1999, they had never targeted a car or a truck towards a female target.
Wow. By 88, you said?
No, 98 or 99.
98?
No, yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
Okay.
So I got up at front of a table, which was all men, and I just said, gentlemen, no man has ever bought a minivan of his own volition. Yeah. His wife is telling him that it's time for them to buy a minivan because they have kids, they have a family, they have things to do. And so we did the first minivan that played movies and sold out. It was their first female target, and they sold out all the products. So that was sort of, it's not defending a budget, but it's defending a target.
Yeah.
And I think it was one of my first conversations with a very famous Napa producer who shall remain nameless. And I said, so what are you doing to market to women? And he said, oh, well, the wine club is like the guy that owns the credit card. And I looked at him and I thought, back in the freaking 90s, what am I doing here? How did I, honestly, people have come a long way, but they need to go farther, because I'm here to tell you, if you are not talking to women in some way, shape, or form with your brands, because women are in charge of about 85% of the purchase decisions, of all purchase decisions in the United States. So if you're not talking to women, if you're not being in a place where they're finding you, it's not great. I know that, the guys love to buy the, Bill Harlan's, all of his fantastic $800 bottles of wine, but I'm talking about your core product. What are you doing to target women?
Yeah.
Do it.
I recently spoke with Kaylee Theriel, who works for Nielsen IQ in the beverage department, and she made a really important call out that there's a difference between a shopper and a consumer. And often the shopper is a woman. So even if the end consumer is going to be... It's a famous adage from Super Bowl advertising, because for years and years it was like beer and chips and whatever. And they're like, we have to talk to guys. And then somebody figured out, ooh, who's shopping for it? Well, let's see. Yeah. It's true. So really important to keep that in mind, especially when the relationship is outside of the direct relationship and it's not just the person sitting in your tasting room. Yeah. So in your experience in this defense of the marketing budget, what are the metrics that really resonate with the decision makers? What do we have to show them to prove the ROI? Well, there's sales, and then there's sales, and then there's sales. I think that brand awareness is squishy, and it's hard for people to understand what that is. Yeah. Right. But it's how you're known in the community. Right. But I don't know that if I'm in the C-suite of whether I'm, mom and pop, or I'm doing it from a, higher order, larger company, it's harder to defend. But that said, you need to be investing in brand awareness as well as in, invest for the short-term promotion and sales. Nobody's going to believe it if you're not moving your numbers. So you have to find a way to figure that out. And that's incredibly important to do. However that works, whether it's a second line brand, whether it's coming up with a benefit that it's, it's new and it's cool and this is what we're doing. But you have to find a way to move it in a way that will make people care about it. Yeah. So when thinking about this synchronous kind of investing in the brand awareness, which maybe is a little bit more long-term versus the short-term of sales, the promotions, is there a ratio, some kind of confidence interval you should be I would say 60-40. I would say you should be investing in brand awareness, which is long-term, and 40% for short-term sales. People would argue with me, but if you are not, your price and how you're doing that is your long-term. That's who you are. The famous McDonald's story, when they started to discount, coming out of that was very difficult for them. Yeah. So discounting is always problematic. Trying to make your numbers through discounting. If you're a premium brand, don't ever discount. Yeah. Just don't, because your price is your position. Yeah. I agree. So sometimes when we give kind of examples, case studies of brands like, Procter & Gamble or, if we're talking about Veuve Clicquot or something like that, a smaller producer might kind of shut down and say like, well, I don't have their budget anyway. So
people often do that.
Yeah. So what is like a cost-effective marketing strategy that would still deliver some pretty strong ROI for these smaller producers?
Well, I mean, I've already mentioned OTT and CTV, but I think you also need to be aware. I mean, you need to go on podcasts. You need to get noticed in the industry. You need to do something really completely interesting. I mean, just doing your wine club delivery is not going to cut it. What are you doing? Who are you partnering with? You have to try things. And partnership is one of the things that I think that smaller brands can really do. And I think that resonates with all kinds of people. And whether that's art or that it's music or it's fashion. These are all categories looking for partnerships, and they go out and do that. But you're going to have to make the call, figure out what people want to get out of it because they're going to want to get something too. So how are you partnering together? I mean, I think some of the most successful people I see right now are going out to smaller markets. I talked to one woman who's a good friend, and she said she made more money in Chattanooga than she'd made all year because people don't go to Chattanooga.
Yeah.
They're not in Miami and Chicago and Los Angeles and New York. I would try that, and see if you can't build a following.
Yeah.
So smaller markets is a huge strategy right now. And that's something that people should try.
That's a great piece of advice. I've heard some people say, don't fly over the flyover state.
Right. St. Louis, amazing market.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked to people who are senior salespeople from Napa Valley, and they make a lot of money in St. Louis. Cincinnati, great market. But again, these people, you have to be where your customer is.
Yeah. And, even before kind of the current growth that these places are experiencing, they were pretty healthy markets, but there is a lot more growth there than we'll say somewhere than like California, New York. They're not experiencing the level of growth that these places are. So you have the opportunity, right, to grow.
And especially with there's interesting food everywhere.
Yeah.
There's always a lot of creativity in food, and how are you building on that chef community and that relationship. This year at the DTC show, we've got Dusky Estes, who's done a lot of that stuff on television and partnership, and she's done it for charity. And I think that that's going to be amazing because building, the restaurant business and the food business, how those are partnering with wineries and making that come together is great.
Yeah. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about some kind of best practice, maybe to-do lists for wineries right now. If you could give them, a great piece of marketing advice for over the next 12 months, what would it be? Also keeping in mind the current regulatory landscape that Italian wineries will be facing with tariff.
Yeah. I think that, I want to go back to talk about do something that's completely new and fresh. I think too often wine ends up, when things don't work or it's tough economic times, I think that people revert to safety. They revert to caution. Your staff knows their customer. Theoretically, if you hired correctly, talk to your staff and just go and brainstorm. Try something completely new that you've never tried. And maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. But you're going to have to get out there and get noticed and get press. And so staying traditional and staying safe won't work.
Oh, I think I actually heard this at the DTC conference last year, but the importance of actually designating, first of all, your marketing budget that we're all going to stand up for, but then a portion of that marketing budget will say 10% on something that is so far out there. You have maybe not even any, concrete data that this is going to work at all, but it feels like it's outside of the box. It feels like, maybe
I'd go even farther this year. I'd say think about 30 or 35, because in the time of tariffs, I think that we are going to have to try those things at a higher ratio than 10%. That's rather cautious.
Yeah. Okay. Be okay with being uncomfortable
get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah. What are a few kind of low lift changes that a winery can make today that might have a big impact? Because they'll probably have to work up to being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Something we're going to talk about this year, which I'm seeing a lot of in the market, is referral strategies. And so it started with a conversation with my friend Jasmine Egan. And so she was talking about how they had, at her winery, they had decided, okay, if you're in the industry and you come and visit us, we're going to give you VIP service. And what she said that came down from that it was sort of a flow was how much they got referrals from people they didn't even know. And so she's going to come on. Cindy Oxall from Boletta is going to come on, and Joe from Hope Wines in Paso Robles. And they're going to talk about whether you do formalistic partnership referral systems or whether it's just it's a headset for your hospitality people. Because what Jasmine said was, she was like, you cannot believe how much that's been incredible. And I mean, as somebody who's in the industry, we've all had that experience where you've gone to a winery and you've told people that you're in the industry and you don't get treated well. I'm not going to name those people, but I will say I can go back there and I wouldn't send anybody else there. And I know a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so when you think about all the people that you touch, and people just call me, you know, whether they're from Chicago or old friends from Los Angeles or whatever, and they call me and they go, what are the 5 wineries that I've got to go to? And I have a list. So you want to be on that list. And so if you're a wine person, how are you doing that at your winery? I think it's something really simple to do, but having that golden hospitality rule, and then, you know, from a referral, whether it's casual referral or whether it's something more formal, and, you know, the way Cindy's doing it, where she's doing, you know, a different winery they're partnering with every quarter. Okay, cool. That's, you know, also interesting because they want to run the metrics. Yeah. Makes sense to me.
Yeah. Another question I didn't necessarily give you in advance, but so, you know, for the last few years, my bread and butter has been helping Italian wineries build out their own DTC programs, because DTC, the way we know it here in California, is really a budding industry in Italy. And I will argue that there are few that do hospitality the way Italians do. So they already have all of those beautiful pieces in place. I think the anxiety for them is they don't ever want to make waves with their distribution. And it's important to maintain your distributor relationships. Sure. Absolutely. So I understand that that's a real anxiety. But what would somebody, you know, in your position all these years running the DTC Symposium, tell somebody in that position about, you know, kind of how these two things are not opposing forces? They actually, when done right, support.
They're very separate. They're very separate systems that don't necessarily support each other. They're very different. And I think creating a DTC program, especially if you're an Italian winery, I think the hardest thing about wine is you don't know what it tastes like until you open it and have a glass, right? And so if you're an Italian producer, and there's so many amazing Italian wines, how are you going to get people to experience that? And there's a lot of, it could come as in the form of a visual, it could come in music, it could come with the food, but you've got to help the consumer. Why am I going to buy you versus winery XYZ? And you have to do that. It can't just be your family name, can't just be Guy Dog Truck. It has to be, what are you better at than anybody else? What makes you really special? What lights you up and turns you on? And I think managing that creative, because for such a poetic, interesting, romantic business, it is filled with some of the most boring visuals I have seen on God's green earth. It's like, you know, people cheersing, glass, you know, with mountain in the background and the sun setting. I remember when I was in Montepulciano, and I met this woman who was a weaver there, and she was super cool. I bought a shawl from my mother-in-law, and then I had 2 glasses of wine at lunch, and then went back and bought a shawl for myself. But my point is that woman is making it by hand there. Yeah. And there's a story about her. And work with her in those visuals to help sell your wine. I mean, that's just, it sounds random, but it isn't, because it's that artisanal thing that is Italian. And it is in the essence of the Italian people to be artisanal, to be a beautiful craft. Yeah. So do that.
Yeah. And then kind of the whole piece of the people that you are able to invite to your property. This is the other, I think, big key takeaway sometimes for Italian wineries is it's not for them in that moment necessarily about finding a customer who's going to be a repeat buyer, because, you know, most people are not going to travel to Italy very regularly to buy their wine, although it sounds quite lovely. But it's about actually developing it's a life goal, but it's about developing them into a brand ambassador that comes back into the US and finds your wine here. And they're going to buy your wine now from, you know, the wine shop down the street, or from Costco, or from Total Wine, or wherever. But it's about kind of developing these brand ambassadors.
And just learning, I think, some of the baseline varieties, right? I mean, I was listening to this completely fascinating story about Barolo that actually exists that was hidden from the Nazis. And then they brought it out from the 30s and early 40s and they drank it and it was still good.
Wow.
And it was like kind of crazy, right? But I'll never forget that story because it was really cool. And it taught me about Barolo. It's like the tannins can be grippy and sharp, but just give it some time, you know? Or so telling that story is important, you know, because everybody has a different palate. What I like might not be what you like and vice versa. But you've got to learn to do that. You know, that's what you've got to create space in the mindset of the consumers so that they will want to go out and, you know, have something really cool.
Yeah. So you're showing up in the spaces where they're not expecting and you're telling them these cool tidbits that they're not going to hear from anybody else. That have to do with a guy or a dog or a truck.
I mean, I like trucks. My husband has one, but you know, it can't be the only story. Please, dear God, no.
Okay, last question on this. Are there any kind of common mistakes that are really easy fix that you just are hyper prevalent right now?
Please don't show me any rooms in your tasting room that are completely empty in a photograph. Okay, your interior designer is not in charge of your website. Please don't do that. Show me something when you're communicating. Think about the mood that you are trying to convey. Because if you want to be romantic, be romantic. If you want to be fun and funky, do it. We used to, when we were selling campaigns, we would often say, well, if, you know, the voice of this commercial was Kevin Costner, or the voice of this commercial was, you know, whatever. The point is that personalization or thinking about it, who are you? And that doesn't involve your family or the family that's growing the wine or anything about them, but who are you and how do you show up? And sometimes it's easier to think about that if it's an actress or an actor, because you see them in a movie, you see them in a TV show, and that's often an easy thing to do that people can say, okay, now I kind of get it. So now I can think about it broadly. That's easy to fix.
Yeah. A thing I see a lot in market, it's like a vineyard shot or a bottle shot, but not necessarily like a lively people shot. So what's your impression? What's the way to go? Do we need to be showing the vineyards and the bottles, or do we need to be showing the people and the wonderful time that they're having?
Depends on who you are. I think that wine people like to see vineyards more than customers do. I think if you want to come and visit and have that, and you're having a beautiful glass of wine and you're overlooking some vineyards and you're at a great hotel or a great winery, cool. But is that drone shot really compelling? Is it really differentiating? I kind of doubt it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what's going to make people want to come? And usually I think that wine needs to learn from the spirits world, you know, because I think spirits do a much better job. You can look at a vodka commercial. You can look at a bourbon commercial. The Bordeaux did a great campaign last year. The Bordeaux Cru. I mean, everybody thinks about Bordeaux as like, it's a very serious, here's what we're doing in Bordeaux. And it's like, they made it young and fun and it looked happening. And like, I was like, yeah, you want to go to Bordeaux. I mean, is that something that your customer wants? And then being that and being the architect for that, right? Yeah. And that's what's important.
Yeah. Well, Barbara, thank you so much, because you've been offering us so much like practical tidbits, takeaways here. So on this show, Masterclass US Wine Market, as we wind down, we like to ask a rapid fire quiz style questions of our guests to help our listeners better understand the US market and specifically what we've talked about today. So just answer in a couple sentences if you can. I think you've been really good about sprinkling this all the way through what I think your answer is going to be, but what is your number one tip for mastering the US wine market?
Pay less attention to numbers and more attention and talk to more consumers, and especially in Italy, with the people that come to your winery, with the people who are traveling there. Go out of your way to find them and track them down and figure it out, because they're different than Italian customers. They have different concerns. They dress differently. And I think that's important. I'm not saying don't pay attention to numbers, but I think there's too much paid to analytics without people who are, I mean, when I worked for large agencies, we had people who were, you know, had PhDs who were doing analysis. Yeah. Just because you have analytics doesn't mean you are actually able to interpret that data accurately. Yeah. So, and look for trends. But when consumers will never fail you, they will tell you stuff. You know, I did a beauty campaign one time that was, what makes you different can make you beautiful. What I should have said, what makes you look like Crispy Brinkley can make you beautiful. But, you know, it was ahead of its time. Yeah. But the point is, consumers will tell you if you get engaged with them. So do that.
Yeah. That's great advice. Okay, number 2 is something you would have told your younger professional self about selling wine in the US.
I would have said, be smarter, younger, learn more. I mean, what I know now is I think that wine is a really interesting category because I think it's a lot like jazz music. I think that the more you know, the more you don't know. And I think that I have gotten into it more and more and more and deeper and deeper. I mean, we spent a lot of time talking to, lucky for me, Karen McNeil last year, who's like, wow, that's deep. So I would have known more. I was just trying things randomly. As opposed to going at it in a more systematized way and learning more about wine younger is something I should have probably done. But hey.
So, but the key kind of takeaway from that is just always be learning.
Always be learning, because it's a category and you can learn from every single person who's in the business. You can learn from growers, you can learn from vintners, you can learn from marketing people. I like this category more than anything else is because people are generous and they're nice. They really are. They're some of the nicest marketing. They're some of the nicest people that you want to hang out with.
Absolutely.
And so that's why I like being in the wine business.
Amen. Hear, hear. All right, number 3, this is our very practical question, but what is your favorite travel hack when doing market work?
Favorite travel hack is to bring as little as possible and buy when I travel. I've been famous for this for a long time. Like, bring as little. I mean, people always try and say, oh, you have to certain combination of things. Like, screw it. Don't bring a suitcase. Unless you bring a wine suitcase and you're going to Italy, then you definitely have to bring that suitcase. But buy something when you go there because it's going to be special.
I love that. A reminder of where you've been. And, well, like I said, Barbara, thank you so much for being here with me today. It was really fun to do this in person, get to sit right in front of you. How can our listeners connect with you?
You can check out the DTC Wine Symposium. It's early bird right now until October 1st. So that's dtcwinesymposium.com. Can check me out on LinkedIn. And my company is unlo.com, unlo.com.
Amazing. And may I ask a question for our international audience? Is there a virtual option for the DTC Symposium?
There is not.
There is not. Okay. We'll come out here.
You need to come out. We'll
take a trip to Monterey.
Take a trip to Monterey. We'll figure something.
I'll give you this plug. You're making it very worth it to
That's the goal.
Like I said, I was there in Monterey last year and it was fantastic. So thank you again so much for being here. This was such a treat for me. Like I said, it was like talking to a celeb.
Oh, very sweet. January 20th to the 22nd, 2026. See you in Monterey.
See you there. Ciao.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Masterclass US Wine Market. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode and want to stay up to date with the latest industry trends, remember to like, follow, and share our podcast. And if you find value in our conversations, please leave us a review to help others discover the show and grow our community. Stay tuned for new episodes every Monday. Until then, brindiamo il vostro successo!